Welcome everyone to this special edition of Monday Match Analysis. It is the 2024 US Open Power Rankings. I bring on Alex Gruskin so that we can compare our top 10 lists of US Open men's singles title contenders. As always, sometimes the power rankings and my predictions will end up differing a little bit. I say that because the draw is coming out this afternoon, and you can also expect the quarter-by-quarter preview to be coming out either Friday or Saturday. Might take me some time, maybe longer than usual because I'm multitasking here in New York. We're powered by BetUS. With the US Open right around the corner, there's no better time to get started. And currently, BetUS is offering an 125% deposit match on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Please gamble responsibly and don't harass the players. Without further ado, your US Open Power Rankings with Alex Gruskin. We're joined once again by Alex Gruskin, editor-in-chief and the voice of Cracked Rackets, host of the Mini Break Pod. Among many others, we are going hotel to hotel. I am at the US Open for qualifying, and Grusky, you are at Tennis in the Land, the WTA 250 event in Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm really proud of us. This moment feels like a significant accomplishment. We're both on the road. We're both being paid to cover the sport we love so dearly, both in hotel rooms being paid on someone else's dime as well. Shout out to us, Gill Gross. We did it. Congratulations, my friend. It is always good to see your face. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a victory lap. Maybe I'm fine with that. Power rankings for the US Open. The first thing I want to ask you, how did you do with this activity? Because I think this has been like really hard, and I'll tell you specifically what I think is hard about it. But first, I want to hear what you think.
Well, that's just excellent hosting by you. Can I also say your eyebrows in this light are just glowing? I'm never jealous of a man's eyebrows, but tonight you have me beat. So congratulations to you, my friend. The lighting is just pristine.
It's LaGuardia in the background.
Yeah, for sure. This was really difficult. Like, I'm actually really happy this is where we're starting this conversation, because I almost came on the show tonight and said, after Djokovic and Alcaraz, like with everything going on surrounding Sinner, what do you want to do with the rest of your list? Like, I think if you're making a list, those 3 guys, Zverev, have to be on it. Then you get into the Medvedev question. Then you get into the health questions. Then you get into the fact the Ruuds, the Tsitsipas's of the world have not played well. Rublev has finally started to pick up things, but are you really going to trust this run, particularly given the circumstances of all the other players surrounding him? The typical names you would turn to, they don't just pop up immediately. De Minaur has been injured. Hurkacz has been injured. Pick an American out of the hat. You can really make a case for any of them, given what they've done this summer. It was really difficult to come up with my top 10, and I'm curious if you had similar difficulties.
My issue was after the top 5. I think the top 5 was pretty straightforward, and then it falls off a bit of a cliff, and I didn't know what to do after that, because I thought there were maybe about 10 players, maybe even 12 players after the top 5.
A bit of a cliff. That's the understatement of the century. Like, I couldn't agree with you more. I apologize for interrupting, but yeah, it's a huge cliff that falls off. I would argue after 4.
Okay, I have 5. So, okay, that'll be an interesting discrepancy, and we'll see where we land there. But let's start with the not out section. Did you do that? Are you a pro by now?
I did. I have my not just missed out. Alex de Minaur is the first name that comes to mind, because if he had any sort of health, he would be on this list. Grigor Dimitrov had played his way onto this list for the first 7.5 months of the season. And I don't want to overreact to a bad North American hardcourt stretch, but there are other candidates I like a little bit more. If you're taking long shots here in this power rankings, which is how I approach this for what it's worth after. Yeah, to your point, I knew who the 5th name was going to be. I just think there's a delta between 4 and 5. But after that, as I looked at my 8 through 10 spots, my real focus was, okay, not can you make the quarterfinals, but is there a legitimate shot, like 0.1% or greater, that you could actually win this thing? And so guys like de Minaur, Hurkacz, Dimitrov, not Hurkacz, excuse me, de Minaur, Dimitrov just missed out on this list. Taylor Fritz just misses out on this list. Casper Ruud just misses out on this list. It was, those are my just misses. What about you?
Okay. There's one of those guys who I have on my list. I'm on the
Okay.
same page. And actually, my goodness, we're far apart on one of those players. Uh, I agree with you about Alex de Minaur. Has not played since the hip injury on match point at Wimbledon. That eliminates him. You know, there are some players who maybe would have the track record where you could say, "Oh, you never know." Even coming off injury, I don't think Alex is in that category. Dimitrov, I'm with you on that as well. He also had an injury. He's come back. He hasn't been able to put together a result. I do feel like with Dimitrov, there's a little bit of a best of five penalty for him. Like I feel better about his chances in Cincinnati than I do at the U.S. Open. You could say that for a lot of players, but I think for him, it's rather extreme. Um, and then there was one name that you put in there. Oh, and Taylor Fritz, I have him out as well. We don't agree on Ruud. I have Ruud in the top 10.
Okay. Is he high in your top 10?
He's 7.
Interesting. What's the case?
So he's 19-6 on hard court this year.
Okay. That's a
So
good
that's a
case.
75% win percentage.
Yeah.
I like that. And I'm giving him a pass for the summer that he's had because he got sick. Out, but that's kind of where I'm at with Ruud because he just got sick. Before that, it was just he was a very consistent hardcore performer, and he has been in the final of the U.S. Open. Now, I can argue against myself really easily. In fact, he has only one slam quarterfinal outside of Roland Garros. And when I say that this is hard, which is, how we started this conversation, it's because of things like that, where I'm trying to find who am I putting at 7? Who am I putting at 6? And I'm poking these massive holes in my picks. And Ruud is no exception, but hey, he he's a trustworthy player. The U.S. Open is not playing that quick. It's not like Cincinnati. And, Casper just did a lot of winning on hard court in the first 3 months of the season.
Yeah, my concern as it relates to Casper, why he missed my list is you're right, he was sick, but it's been 2 months. Like he has not put together a significant result since the end of the French Open. And I know he takes the grass court season essentially off. That's his mini training block, his off season, his time to go golf and reset things mentally for the home stretch. I just think fitness is so imperative in the year's final major. I just think this is the major in particular where we have had some wild cards over the years because we've played 8 months of tennis, 8 months of physical tennis, particularly in an Olympic year, an event that clearly mattered so much to so many of the top contenders in the world. Again, even there, Casper made the quarterfinals. He lost to Felix. I don't think that was on anyone's bingo card as a clay court result we would see this season. I'm just not inspired by Casper Ruud. And again, my philosophy, big picture to these power rankings was, do I think you could win 7 matches? Is there a recipe with your game style, with how you've played it late, that I could at least justify that to the Monday Match Analysis, the Gill Gross YouTube channel? I forgot how far you've graduated. We're in hotel rooms, Alex. Get it together. The Gill Gross YouTube channel deserves to know that mindset of, again, I want to see swings. Like I want to take some serious swings. And that makes up the logic of my arguments here tonight.
Okay. Yeah. And I can't argue with that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I will adjust on Casper because I am coming into this a little bit flexible. Right now I have him at 7. I left off. I'm just gonna finish the guys who I left off before we get to our number 10.
Okay.
I did not get Tommy Paul in the top 10, and I did not get Taylor Fritz in the top 10. So now, if I'm looking at the guys who just missed, it's 3 Americans. I have Fritz there. I have Korda there. I have Tommy Paul there. Now, I think, and this has been the thing with American men's tennis for a long time, by nature of having a lot of possibilities, I think there's likely to be 2 Americans in the quarterfinal.
Yeah,
But
oh, sorry.
but I couldn't get any of them. I got one of them in my top 10, but I couldn't get those 3. How about you?
I just love that it's Francis in your top 10. That right there is the power of deduction. That's excellent. And I'm looking forward to that discussion because that's another name that I was hoping you would bring up. He just missed out for me. And that gets me to my 9 and 10. They are both Americans. I think this is the window. This is the opportunity for the Americans to do something as special as get two guys to the quarterfinals. If you're an American tennis fan, God willing, maybe even get two to the semis. Like that is how open the spots are. And I feel pretty confident in my top four will be the semifinalists, but absolutely like Francis just missed out for me. I mentioned Taylor earlier, just missed out for me. I gave Ben some thought because if nothing else this season, Ben Shelton has showed up to the majors, and 3 out of 5 sets just seems to be a format physically, game style wise, how well he competes, point in, point out the fact that, again, the energy he brings just leads to he's going to sustain effort in a way others can't. I gave him a serious thought. Francis, of the ones that were missed out, was the closest for me for breaking in. But if you want to get into it, my number 10 is Sebastian Korda. And he is the one where it's a guy on paper. I've made this joke for basketball fans who listen to this channel. If Daryl Morey was to create the perfect player by the analytics, by the numbers, by the size and physicality you would want to see, Sebastian Korda has been that player since he burst onto the scene, right? 2020, 2021. And he's had a really good summer to win the City Open, to semifinal in Canada. Yeah, he let that semifinal get away from him, but still, those are two significant back-to-back results. And yeah, he flamed out of Cincinnati losing to Carreño Busta. I don't really care about that because he gave me 2 big weeks before. For a guy who skipped the Olympics, he absolutely made the most of that opportunity. And then it comes down to a game style thing for Sebastian Korda. He has the requisite weapons to take the racket out of your hand. We've seen him beat a Hurkacz, beat a Medvedev at a major before. Obviously, that quarterfinal in Australia, his best major result to date, and physically he wilted down the home stretch of that tournament. But this is the healthiest Sebastian Korda has ever been through 8 months of a season in his career. And I always say of the special prospects, like when the 6-week run is what I'm looking for. When you go on those special 6-week runs, you're kind of there to stay moving forward. And he put together the first 3 weeks of that 6-week run, Gill Gross. And now he comes to his home major. The race to be the top ranked American man is wide open. I just think Sebastian Korda has the goods physically. He has the skills to do it. And for once, he has the confidence and health going into a major in a way maybe others don't. He had to crack my top 10 for that reason. He's the Jack Draper equivalent for my Wimbledon power rankings. I have Korda at 10.
It's the longer term track record that held me back. And Korda, he's 24. So he's at that stage where you're no longer looking at like the 21, 22-year-old who's on that like really steep positive trajectory. It's taken a while, and I understand there's been a lot of physical things, but if you just look at this year at the majors, actually no, let's go since the how far back should we go? Okay, obviously
I'd say
last
Aussie
year.
run. That's good.
Okay, since the Aussie quarterfinal run, second round, first round, third round, third round, first round. That's where I just shy away from him. It has been a great summer. I thought about putting Sebastian Korda in because it's been a great summer and because I think he's really talented. But between the fact that he hasn't really given me runs at slams other than that one, and mentally, when it comes to pressure, when it comes to best of 5, I'm not quite there with him, and I don't fully trust him. I left him off.
It's a really good argument you make. I have no counter for it. Every point valid. The flip side of your point is he is 24 years old. There's some urgency. It's kind of now or never for, okay, do you have another gear to hit? And from a narrative perspective, I apologize. Your listeners deserve quantitative analysis, but here's a qualitative thought. If it's going to happen, it feels like the tennis gods are saying, hey, this is the major, man. Let's go. This is your huge opportunity. Again, my power rankings are about taking swings. That's why he's my 10.
Yeah. No, I got that. There have been some things I've liked, by the way. I think he's He's finally starting to serve as big as he needs to and as big as he should. And, it's not as if it's all the way there for a 6'5" guy, but it really is getting closer. And I do think he's playing with more fire. So your number 9 is
Tommy Paul, next on the list.
okay.
Tommy Paul's been really good all season long. And
Yep.
I know he just missed out on your list, but really the only negative for Tommy Paul has come when he was injured this season. Like right now he's 9th in Tennis Abstract's overall ELO ratings. And I know his losses in North America, Nakashima and Kaboli, not the most inspiring heading into New York. But man, like I trust him physically. I think a big event, like I do think big matches brings out the best Tommy. And again, that is not a quantifiable thing, but you look for Tommy Paul so far this season, career high 82.2% hold percentage, career high 72% first serve win percentage, career high 26.1 break percentage. This is prime Tommy. Like this is his best season. And we really haven't seen him have a signature slam run. Like I know he made quarters of Wimbledon, played Alcaraz really well. Would you call that a signature run for Tommy, or would you call that par for the course of what he's capable of now? And I do think Tommy is a guy who, again, the best matches, the best opponents, he brings out his best. I'm a believer in Tommy Paul heading into New York.
Yeah, and I want to be, and I want to put him in my top 10. And
I
I
like that.
think from a prediction standpoint, see, this is where there might be a little bit of a difference. I think I might back Tommy Paul to punch up above his weight 1 or 2 times at this U.S. Open. I wouldn't be surprised. We have to see what the matchups are. Um, but essentially, I love the tennis that he's been playing this year as well. I think again from start to finish, he's been the best American.
Agreed.
He's been better than Taylor Fritz if you take into account the injury. The problem is, yeah, the North American thing just kind of scared me off. He lost to Nakashima and Kaboli, as you mentioned, and lost third round at the Australian Open this year, lost fourth round at the U.S. Open last year. He's never been to a U.S. Open quarterfinal. If we're looking at Frances Tiafoe at number 10, because let's conflate the two, uh, that's a guy who the last 2 years at the U.S. Open has gone further than Tommy Paul has ever gone, and he's in better form. He pushed Alcaraz to 5 at Wimbledon, and he's been a different player since. 4 top 20 wins in that span, Washington semifinal, Cincinnati final. So, between Francis getting it going and the US Open track record where, he's at his best when he's playing with emotion and he's using the energy from the crowd, that's where Tiafoe, and I didn't expect this to be the case. Like, obviously, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
2 months ago, if you would have told me Francis is going to be the highest American on your power rankings, I would have said no chance.
Yeah.
But here we are.
No, it's my favorite subplot of the U.S. Open, and it applies to both the men's and the women's side because there are 5 top American women in the top 5 top 20 American women, excuse me, on the women's side. I think there's 5 men in the top 25 right now as well. And we're playing in New York. Again, the home slam for these Americans. They all have opportunities. Brought up a big name, Carlos Alcaraz. And I think my case for Tommy over Francis, and I think this is a huge argument for Tommy over the next 3 to 5 years, he plays Alcaraz as well as anyone. Like it just has to be said with how well he has played him time after time after time. Like you can't write it off as a fluke anymore. Tommy just has the foot speed you need, the improvisational skills you need to react to everything Alcaraz throws at him. And yes, Francis played him close at Wimbledon. Do you trust Francis's forehand to hold up over the course of 7 matches the way you trust the way Tommy's game has held up so well? And just quickly, his slam results since 2023 semifinals of Australia, right? He then goes second round French, third round Wimbledon, fourth round US Open last year. Then he goes third round Australia, third round Roland Garros, quarterfinals Wimbledon since. He's been knocking on the door.
Consistent.
He's been pretty consistent in holding seed at a minimum, which is half the job. That's my argument for Tommy over Francis is the consistency.
Yeah. Again, it hurts me to not have him in. Let me go to my number 8. It's Andrey
Okay.
Rublev. He
Who's
is.
your 9?
Oh, sorry, that's my 9. My 9 is
Okay.
Andrey Rublev. Okay.
Okay.
Rublev since skipping the Olympics and taking a break. His record is 8-3. He beat Sinner once, and he played him
Yeah.
6-4 in a third set the following week. So Rublev, obviously 0-10, Mr. Quarterfinal. We've talked about how in one way that's really impressive, in one way that's horrible. And that's why, he's normally been around this kind of zone in the power rankings. I guess I'm interested to hear where you have Andrey Rublev high. I'm assuming either higher or the same, given you're looking at, title chances, because that's where you always get tripped up with Andrey Rublev is, can I see him winning a semi? Can I see him winning a major final?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have him at 8. He was next up on my list. And he, like Korda, has made the most of this North American hardcore summer. And maybe no one needed it more than Andrey Rublev after the disaster that was everything but his 1,000 level title since Dubai. The problem of why he can't be higher than 8 is we know the ceiling. It's quarterfinals, and we know who Andrey Rublev is. He has gotten back to hitting his first serve at a higher clip. He has gotten back to asserting himself with his first forehand. He also went through this stretch, and you have to watch all the matches, but I swear to God, he went down 3-0 in first sets in like 13 straight matches. And I'm not saying he lost all those matches, but he was getting off to the slowest starts. And other than the Popperin match in the Canada final, that just hasn't been the case in this North American summer, even in his loss in DC. Andrey, again, I always like to say tier 1, absolute title contender. Tier 2, I just know you're going to be in the final mix. You can make the case that Andrey Rublev belongs in tier 2 because, for the most part, he beats who he's supposed to beat, particularly at these hard court majors of late. I just can't justify to the tennis gods making the argument that, yeah, this is the slam where he not only gets past the quarterfinals, but he wins it. And while I respect the consistency, he'll make the final 8, but 8 feels right for him.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like the moment for Andrey Rublev. And I mean, as great as it was to make the Canada final, the Popperin match was really bad. So,
Yeah.
you almost don't feel awesome coming out of that. Now, it was obviously a positive week for Rublev as a whole, but it did put a sour note on it because it's one thing losing, it's another thing not performing, which Rublev started to kind of get out of his system, the kind of duds in the big matches, but that was another one there. Let's go now. I will give you my number 8. It is Hubert Hurkacz.
I like that. He's my
There
7.
are there are health concerns. He did the knee at Wimbledon, and then he wasn't moving much at Cincinnati. It might have been a back, it might have been the knee. It was clear he was compromised, but I'm not 100% on exactly what went wrong. So obviously, there you kind of dock points. I might have had him higher because he's having the best year of his career. He has been incredibly upset proof. He has in the past kept it close, at least at slams against top players. Like, when he played Djokovic at Wimbledon, that was a good match a couple of years back because when his serve gets hot at any, in any conditions really outside of clay, he's going to be a ton to handle. So I've seen some good signs from him emotionally, on the forehand, not beating himself as much on that side. And so I think he's been the best Hubert Hurkacz ever in 2024. But at the same time, I'm not super enthused by the timing of the health issues and the fact that, at Wimbledon, even though it goes down as a retirement loss, he once again found himself in a position to lose a match early at a major, which has happened too much in his career.
Yeah, I think those are all very fair points. He's 7th on my list, and we give a shout out to ourselves for the upgrade in venue we're hosting tonight's pods in. Shout out to doctors and science. Like, I just don't understand how Fritz and Hurkacz can come back from knee injuries the way they have so quickly. Like, my younger brother tore his menisci in both of them in his right knee, and he's out for 3 years. Like, he ain't coming back anytime soon, and these guys did it in under a month. Hubie Hurkacz, you look overall on the season, he's tied for 6th with 19 hard court wins, most amongst top 50 players, 38-16 overall. other than his first round loss to Gael Monfils or first match loss at Indian Wells, I could make a case to you, Gill Gross, that he hasn't taken a bad loss all season.
Yeah.
Like the fee match, again, he was injured, but he loses to Tiafoe in Cincy. Tiafoe, and he had to retire from that match. Tiafoe is awesome in Cincinnati. He loses to Popperin 3-6, 7-6, 7-5 in Canada. Popperin was awesome in Canada. Again, losses to Sinner and Halle, Dimitrov at Roland Garros, Tommy Paul in Rome. Like, I can keep going. There's just not really a bad loss on his resume this year. And again, half the battle is beating who you're supposed to beat. The health thing is a major wild card. But I think Hubie, for the most part, has beaten who he's supposed to beat in what has been the best year of his career. Why I have him above Rublev, the serve. Like, just that first serve, that ability to win free points, that ability to play on his own terms, it's so essential at this point of the season and all points of the season. But that certain the forehand, when he's on the run and pressured by pace, he just goes high line now. Like, he just knows, okay, that's my defense mechanism. I'm going to go high elevated line. I dare you to attack my on the run backhand. And is it the most dynamic forehand? Still no. But that certainty he now plays with, that's what I keep turning to. I could see if he's healthy. No, but then it's still Hurkacz at the major. 7 feels about right. 7,
Yeah.
8 range. I
Yeah.
agree.
And it's funny because, hardcourt masters have been his jam. I mean, he's gone on so many nice runs in hardcourt masters. That's another thing that makes me kind of feel good about him. I feel like he's over the mental hump at the majors, which, really started in Australia this year. It was good for him there. And again, it's been remarkable. It used to feel like Hurkacz could lose to anybody because the margins were so small in his matches. He is, in the last 52 weeks, 33-4 against players outside the top 50.
That's half the battle. Beat who you're supposed to beat in this sport. You're going to be in a position to do successful things. That was what he's done here this season.
All right, so my number 7 is Casper Ruud. We've already discussed him, and your number 7, I believe, we've also already discussed because it's Hurkacz.
Correct.
Okay, let's go to this number 6 spot. We started this conversation saying that after 5, it falls off a cliff. I'm going to be stunned if we have the same player because I did not expect this at all. I thought I went bold, but we might have both done the same thing. I have Holger Rune.
Oh, okay. That's devastating.
Who do you have?
Because Holger, I want you to know I was either going to put Holger in this spot or leave him off, and I left him off. I have Matteo Berrettini, and I'm taking a swing on my number 6 spot. I think we're both taking a swing. I'd love to hear the Rune case first.
Okay. He had a wrist issue.
Yeah.
Gave it some rest. Mm-hmm. Gave Kenneth Carlsen the keys. Yeah. So there's pieces moving. There are things that have changed, and there are positive results. And we've seen in the past that he can bring a top 5 level. So even though there's not like the year had been difficult until recently, when I see circumstances change, reason to believe that the struggles are in the past, and I think that there's 2 things, from a health standpoint and from a coaching standpoint that have maybe rejuvenated him. Plus, I'm just starting to see the corner get turned by a player who is ultra talented. So, I mean, that's the main thing. Again, there are things that concern me. He hasn't made the quarterfinals of a hardcourt slam. He's done it twice at Roland Garros. He's done it at Wimbledon. Hasn't done it at the hardcourt slams. He is 4-13 versus the top 20 in the last 52 weeks. But I think, a lot of that is just because it had been abysmal against top 20 competition. But to me, again, big swing in this number 6 spot, high ceiling. I like Holger Rune. He has elevated skills, an elevated kind of full package in terms of tennis capabilities, offensively and defensively, compared to the other guys in this weight class.
It's a really good pick to make. Again, it's amazing how quickly he went from very clearly right alongside Alcaraz and Sinner as the third best prospect or tied for third, that tier one prospects moving forward over the next decade. And now he's just not on that list. And with guys like Musetti and Fee and pick a name out of a hat, there are a lot of really good young players out there right now. It does feel like Rune has kind of fallen into the middle of that pack. And just that's crazy to think, given he was probably the fourth best player in the world through Wimbledon last year, maybe fifth, like sixth, whatever, but very clearly top eight. And there have just been bouts of inconsistency that are so shocking, given how sound he is technique wise off both wings, given from a skill set perspective, even when it comes to volleying and touch and feel. And, you know, again, the pace he's now able to generate on his +1, like Holger Rune hits himself out of matches far more frequently than you would think for a guy with his physical profile and skill set. And yet I can't knock the pick, because if you're taking a swing, again, we mentioned this in the Korda section, 19 to 21 years old, like still that alley or that lane to make that massive leap. And we've already seen him make quarterfinals of a major before. I don't hate the pick at all. It's still free points for him to add as well. And if he tries to make a push back towards the top 12, 10 to end the season, this is a huge event for him. Again, it's inconsistency out of Holger Rune. That would be my biggest qualm, but from a profile and narrative standpoint, makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Tell us about Matteo Berrettini. I'm shocked by this. I mean, did I consider the name? Yes.
Okay.
But I consider hardcourt to be Matteo's worst surface.
2 out of 3 sets, though. That's the thing we've talked about in the past.
Yep.
You look for him hardcourt majors in his career, 26-9 overall, and you take out the 1-2 record from the last 2 hardcourt majors he's played. Again, 25-7 overall. That includes quarterfinals at the U.S. Open twice. He's made semifinals in Australia as well. In fact, quarterfinals at the U.S. Open 3 times. And you look at his last U.S. Open results, he went semis 19, round of 16 20, quarterfinals 21, quarterfinals 22, had to retire out of last year's event, but did beat Ugo Humbert in round number 1 when he was healthy. Matteo Berrettini is very good in New York. And again, this part of the year, I want weapons. I want things that are going to make your life easy for you. That's Matteo Berrettini's serve. That's his forehand. He knows exactly who he is. You get to see him in person and you understand why his backhand slice line is so effective, because his opponents just has to pop that next ball up. And when they do, he's fit enough to find that forehand, and now he's in control of the point. My big number as it relates to Matteo Berrettini, he's played 10 tournaments this year. He's 37th in the points race. That's crazy on 10 tournaments. He's made 5 finals in 10 events. Again, yeah. He has been so good when he has played this year. Has he had the big slam results? No, not yet. But U.S. Open is typically where that comes. And I'm taking swings. You mentioned it. Mm-hmm. The cliff here, we're at the bottom. Like, you're looking up in the Grand Canyon. There's a lot of climbing to do. Berrettini's got the strength. He's got the weapons to make that climb. I'm taking a swing. Of all the wild cards, he would be the one where I've just seen it before. It makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think he is being slept on because he's not. I've been saying it since he came back, and we both watched him in Phoenix. And the takeaway in Phoenix is, oh, he's actually not that far away. Like right now, like he's, he's kind of almost where he needs to be. So, it doesn't take him long to get to that place. I personally, like, where I would push back is I don't like Berrettini as a upset threat of the elite. I just think that he struggles too much in the baseline rallies. Everyone talks about the backhand, but the movement is just as much of an issue in the neutral baseline rallies. So I think he normally gets killed in the second serve battles against the very best, and that makes it difficult for him. But I also respect the pick on your end. I love that we are so incredibly different in this 6th spot, because that's how this feels. It feels totally crazy after 5. Okay. So you said there's a big gulf between 4 and 5. I think that means that you have Daniil Medvedev at 5 because you think that Zverev is clearly better. I also have Zverev at 4 and Medvedev at 5. You have that as well?
I do. I don't think Zverev is clearly better. I think he's clearly playing better. And I
Yeah.
think that matters as it relates to Daniil Medvedev right now, because do you know he has not been top 25 in hold percentage all season long? You know, I'm a slave to the tennis abstract stat leaderboards. And obviously, we can get into the nuances of his serve, what's gone wrong, not just the serve. People seem to know his spots. People seem to know I have to take advantage of his return. People know how to play Daniil Medvedev now. I don't need to
No.
go into the specifics. We all know what that report card is. Now, it's still 3 out of 5 sets on hard courts. As bad as he has been at times this year, from 2 sets to love down, he beat Zverev. From I forget what the deficit was in the quarterfinals in Australia, but another sensational win for him there. And he was up 2 sets to love on Sinner in the Australian Open final as well. He beat Alcaraz in the best match I have ever seen him play in the semifinals of this event last year. You know, again, he will thank the crowd because them booing is why he's this good. We all remember that Daniil Medvedev story. Like, New York is the place. The problem is there's just nothing inspiring to go on. And there are some pretty glaring issues for him that, look, the top 4 have been very consistent all season long. When they've played, they're in the mix for the big titles. You can't say that about Medvedev, but it is still best. Again, I'm contradicting myself. I apologize.
No.
That's why I say golf.
Right. No, I get it. I mean, the back-to-back losses that Daniil Medvedev has taken, I don't know that we've seen anything like that since 2019. Even when he was, I mean, I guess he did have a pretty bad bout towards the end of 2023, right? I mean, was it that bad? I'm looking at it right now. No, it wasn't that. Oh, I meant 2022, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost 3 matches in a row at the tour finals, but yeah, it was nothing like this.
Yeah.
To have your North American hardcourt summer be first round loss to Alejandro Davidovich Fokina, first round loss to Yuri Lehechka, who hadn't played in, 3-4 months. Not good. I mean, he has the surface changing as an excuse, as do, by the way, all of these players. I don't think that this has been an easy North American hardcourt summer for anyone who played the Olympics, and I just think we've seen that pretty vividly. You look like a guy like Taylor Fritz. I don't think he would have played that badly over the summer had he not gone deep at the Olympics. But so many players are dealing with it. I digress. I'm with you on Medvedev. You're afraid because one, you doubt him on hard court and he tends to make you look silly. And there have been a couple times in his career where I think it's been easy to fall into that trap. He has been a clear tier 1 hard court player for, 3 or 4 years, but longer.
North of that. Yeah,
What, since
2019.
2019?
That City Open run.
Well, 2019 is half a year, and then he did have that one dipping 2022 year where he wasn't as good. So that's why. So okay, let's say 4 years.
Okay.
4 years of like tier 1 hardcourt play. All right. Who is he as a player right now, though? Like that's where I'm worried about the state of Daniil Medvedev. Is he the physical beast that is just going to put up a wall on the baseline and he's never going to miss and there's no way through, and you're just going to completely suffer physically against this absolute grinding animal? I feel like he's lost a little bit of that. He misses more from neutral, in my opinion. It's not quite as stout defensively, but he's not serving as big. So that's made it difficult for him to make up for that offensively.
Yeah. I agree with everything. I agree with everything you said. His forehand has gotten him in trouble in a lot of different matches, it feels like, because he had, again, the problem is, I think about the first 2 sets against Sinner in the final. The problem is, it is burned into my brain. It was again, we had a family reunion.
He's going after his forehand more now.
Yeah,
is that kind of what you're getting at?
Absolutely. And it like, I wonder if he's doing the balance of the equation, putting balls in play versus the just necessity to be a little bit more aggressive at this point of his career. Like, has that balance tipped too far towards the aggressive standpoint? Also, like, does he need to be returning closer to the baseline right now? Just given, again, some of the given the aggressive posture with which he's trying to play. you're right. Like, it feels like Daniil Medvedev is still searching right now for the best version of himself in a way he wasn't in the consequential moments in Australia or in that Alcaraz match last year. That's why to me there's a clear gulf between him and the top four, because I know exactly what I'm getting out of my top four guys. And I'm not saying one of them might not lose early, but I just can't say I know exactly what I'm getting out of Daniil Medvedev right now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's an identity issue right now.
Yeah.
Zverev at 4, his performance at the majors has been terrific this year. Semifinal, final, fourth round with an injury. I really don't think he would have lost that match to Taylor Fritz if he had his full movement. He has also made the final weekend at the U.S. Open, 2 out of the last 3 that he's played, final weekend being semifinal or final. I think Zverev is also playing the best tennis of his career in 2024. And I don't think it's because he's fixed a weakness. I think his strength actually got better. His serve it's the best he's ever served. So it's an interesting, almost a lesson that you can look at, that the path to improvement is not always through weaknesses. Sometimes you can make your strength better and that can be it.
No, what's so fascinating to me is it's a complete reversal of who he was early in his career. This is a guy who was constantly top 10 in break percentage. I would consider him proverbially one of the best returners on tour, but the break percentage has actually really fallen off for him this season. 20.8%. That's his lowest clip since 2015, his first full season of tour level play. And yet it's holding 91.4% of the time. Like, that's prime Isner, prime Federer sorts of numbers, and it's very much manifested in the tennis you see him now play, with his big first serve, with the big +1 forehand even, and his willingness to move forward. What's been so amazing, we talked about this at Wimbledon, his nervous mechanism, or his mechanism to fight nerves now, is just push forward, put pressure on his opponent, and just pray they don't pass him. Now, he is still number 1 on my list of floats to the first volley, gets past, and then looks at the chair to say, as if like, oh, that was just too good. It's like, no, man, you not the chair, his team, excuse me. It's like, no, man, you just floated the first volley. Like, I don't know what you want us to tell you. But he is uber consistent. And again, like, the problem with Zverev, why he's always going to be 4 on this list, is eventually it's going to be a 4th set. Eventually he's going to be serving down 4-5. And eventually the nerves that you know are going to creep in are going to creep in. There's going to be a bad miss +1 forehand. There's going to be a floated first volley. Like, we know exactly who Sasha Zverev is, for better or worse. And it's been a hot take that's been brewing in my head that I don't know if it's worth tangenting us right now, but like, is Sasha Zverev the best player to never win a major? It's a discussion for December, not for right now.
Yeah.
But he's done everything else, and he's been really consistent this year. Quarterfinals Canada, semifinals Cincy, plays Sinner close as well, plays all the big guys well. He has to be 4th on this list. He just has to be.
He does. It's pretty easy. And statistically, I do think he is the best player to never win a major. But that's fascinating stuff on the break hold percentage. I did not realize his break percentage was so far down. It supports what I've seen with my eyes, which is that the serve has gone to a completely new level. Like, we always considered Alexander Zverev a good server, but this is something different this year.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Top
1
3.
through 3.
This is fun. I think I know who your 3 is. 1 and 2 I'm fascinated about. The most fascinating part for me is where you have Djokovic. Because he's 37 years old and he hasn't won a major this season.
Yeah.
And yes, he's fresh off of an Olympic gold medal. The thing he has been chasing since he became the Novak Djokovic in his career. He got it. And, again, to be able to have that sort of moment, not just for himself, but for his fans, for his country, to see the reception was just the coolest thing, and proof that tennis does matter to so many different people in so many places. What's the motivation for Novak Djokovic heading into this U.S. Open? How much juice, not just physically, where he's still coming off of injury, but it sounds like he's practicing now without the brace, but how much juice mentally does he have left in the tank for a run here in New York? And I just think this is going to be a heel turn in the best sense for Novak Djokovic. I think the concept of him leaving this season without a major title, like, I think that will burn in his mind. Like, yeah, cool, I got this gold medal as well. Now let me end with a major, and let me just put the final bow in what was maybe the perfect, I don't want to say finishing season because he's still got a long runway left in his career, but just like the fairy tale ending to a year that it's the only thing he hasn't done like yet in his career is something like this. To play Carlos again in a final, like to have another battle between those two, how special would that be? Yeah, I think Novak's number one on my list. And I don't feel the most confident to your point, but he's one on my list because it's just like, oh, you thought I was done after that gold medal? Watch what I do in New York.
You think motivationally that this is like a high point for him?
No, but I think people think it'll be a low point for him, and I think that'll be enough motivation to be like, "Oh, you thought the gold medal was all I cared about? No, like I'm still Novak. Like I want to get quarter century. I'm trying to hit 25. I'm trying to pad my stats because Alcaraz be whooping all y'all asses right now, and
Hey,
like
look,
I'm trying to pad those stats, and so
that's
that's
the
my case.
question.
Yeah,
That's the question. And I want everybody to understand this when we talk about motivation. It's not about being motivated this week, next week or the week after. It's about the last 2 weeks.
exactly.
He hasn't played any tennis. How hard has he been grinding? How much has he been suffering in the gym? That is where you make the distinction. So people don't once you're on the court playing the match, we all know Novak Djokovic is going to battle his ass off. Like there's no question about that. The question is, after the Olympics, was there a victory lap? How long was that victory lap? How much did he grind? Right now, I have Novak Djokovic number two on my list. I heavily considered putting him at number one. He is the defending champion at the U.S. Open. I would like to point out that he was an absolute world wrecker on hard court last year. He played 5 big hard court events and he won all 5. Australian Open, Cincinnati, US Open, Paris Masters, year-end championship. Like, what? I mean,
At 36, by the way.
he went 5 for 5 winning
Yeah.
titles at big hard court events. And then since Roland Garros, he's been really good statistically. He's 16-1 since Roland Garros, since the withdrawal doesn't count as a loss.
Yeah.
I don't
It's
love, and I know you put him at number one, so you're not going to have much to say to that. I don't love the lack of match play. Let me throw that at you. He hasn't played on hard court since Indian Wells.
where he lost to Luca Nardi. His serve was uninspiring the first third of the season on hard courts, even when he was winning matches. Such a stark contrast to where 2023, where you could argue it was his best season, maybe not statistically right up there. I think it was top 3 by hold percentage, but certainly from an eye test, just how efficient he was in hitting his spots and how effective he was with his +1s off both wings. I just, again, you're right. Like the case so Carlitos is my 2 as well. Sinner's my
Okay.
3.
Yeah.
Sinner 3. It's just all the circumstances surrounding him. Hard to play your best tennis when every question is about your ethics for 2 weeks consistently.
I have Sinner at 3, but it's not all about that for me. There's other stuff.
Okay, can you talk about the other stuff for me?
Yeah. So I don't think his form in the second half, even with the Cincinnati title, it doesn't look the same to me as it was in the first half. Like eye test wise, it seems to me that he's not quite as solid. So there are more errors in his baseline game, particularly off of his forehand. And then physically, like it was another tournament where it felt like he was battling his body and he was grabbing at his hip at times. And best of 5, I think there's a little bit of a tax with Sinner, considering all of the issues that he's had since Monte Carlo this year, where it started to pile up, and there was just physical stuff, and it takes its toll. So it's a fitness question for me at the end. Like I'm not concerned about his fitness when it comes to making the quarters or making the semis or maybe even making the final, but when he plays a Alcaraz or a Djokovic or a Zverev, or maybe if Medvedev's playing well, it's like, okay, now you're probably going to have to go 5 and you're going to have to do a lot of running. And will the legs hold up? And that's a more significant question that I have for Sinner. I don't have a question that is that pressing, an equivalent for Djokovic and Alcaraz necessarily.
I have nothing to add. Again, had I elaborated elaborated on the Sinner aspect. The physicality, that's the difference between Djokovic and Alcaraz. Their bodies just hold up the best 3 out of 5 in a way that Sinner, as good as he was in Australia, the Alcaraz lost in the
Yeah.
semifinals of the French Open. He was grabbing the hip, just all these different things, that inconsistency. Yes, he won Cincinnati, but you're absolutely right. He was fighting himself through a lot of it. That doesn't happen with Carlos. Like, he
Yeah.
may hit himself out of a match, but even that's extraordinarily rare here this season. The man is a monster. 3 out of 5 sets physically.
He gets a best of 5 boost for me. So it's kind of the reverse Sinner where, I think in best of 3, sometimes
Yeah.
it just feels like Alcaraz can take upset losses. Like
Sure.
it happens. Best of 5, it's been the complete opposite. He's never taken a bad loss since becoming a top 10 player. His record at the US Open is 16-2. And one of the losses is, like, first of all, he's 19 years. Sorry, he's younger than 19. US Open 2021 against Felix, and he retired with a hip. So he's essentially 16-1 at the US Open. The courts are playing pretty slow. I think when it comes to hard courts, the speed matters for Alcaraz. And it's not like Cincinnati, lightning quick. Speaking of which, I don't care that he lost to Monfils at all. He needed to rest. And just like what we were talking about with Djokovic, I imagine most of the preparation coming into Cincinnati was actually not preparing at all and trying to get the body right because it was such a crazy summer. We saw Alcaraz on a yacht the week before Cincy. I don't know if it was a yacht, some kind of boat, a vessel. Let's call it a vessel.
Sure.
So, yeah, and then it was a windy day and he takes a first round loss. It just doesn't matter to me. To me, here's what we're looking at. You have 3 elite players, but one has won the last 2 slams. So, the guy who's won the last 2 slams is going to be my number 1.
It's a very fair argument. I have no nitpicking with it. The crux of my argument is I'm just not ready to see Novak Djokovic leave a season without a major title. And you could argue in his mind, and certainly in the tennis mind, his gold medal was a major to him, certainly. But Alcaraz, as a number 1 pick, having won the French, having won Wimbledon, and the way in which he did it, I can't knock it at all.
And that concludes our US Open Power Rankings. I have our complete lists up on the screen right now for the YouTube viewers. We have the same exact top 5, Gruskin and I, other than Alcaraz and Djokovic being flipped at the top. I have Alcaraz 1, Gruskin has Djokovic 1. Our number 6s are kind of the wild cards. I have Holger Rune, Gruskin has Matteo Berrettini. And then after that, I have Ruud at 7, Hurkacz at 8, Rublev at 9, Tiafoe at 10. Gruskin has Hurkacz at 7, Rublev at 8, Tommy Paul at 9, and Sebastian Korda at 10. Thank you again, Gruskin, for coming on. Make sure to check out his podcast on the Cracked Rackets Podcast Network. Thanks for BetUS for the support. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.